Hello, this is Haben Abraham again, owner of Haben Abraham Vision Coaching LLC. Hello, Hartford Public Library, and all of the listeners um, tuning in. I am here with another walkthrough as part of the journaling journey series. And today's topic is going to focus on the theme of isolation and sort of discussing some aspects of isolation as well as what are some tips and things that we can look at and consider in terms of working through some of those feelings around isolation. So, as we typically do, I will facilitate another journaling activity on that theme of isolation. And then I want to walk you through some ideas, um, maybe reconsidering things, or considering things for the first time around what we can do differently, what needs to be added or what needs to be taken away in terms of what's not helping you deal with isolation during quarantine. As well as some things around whether you're in quarantine alone or with family members, folks that you live with, children, partners, other family members, friends, etc. So, um, for materials, again, whatever you prefer to use when you are doing an activity like this. If you are more of a writer, obviously using whatever pens, pencils, paper, journal, an actual journal would be helpful. If you're more visual, you can use paint. Whatever mode of creative expression speaks to you, and maybe you want to try something different, and maybe you're used to writing, and so maybe you want to draw this time. But either way, there will be a prompt for you to think about, and you can do with that what you will in terms of how you want to creatively respond to it. So, um, to begin with, when we speak about isolation, we tend to not address the grieving that has really come on as a result of this pandemic. There is a lot of loss that's been involved during this time. And so grieving is a process as well. And I think for some folks, it may be easier to deal with than others. Um, there's a huge emphasis on this idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps that has really, I think, fallen on its face during this time. It's at times, I think, used as too much of a cop out to not process one's feelings or to really deal with something at the core. Another part of isolation that I think we need to hold is the importance of both the self at the core, and also the fact that we are social beings and we do and can heal within community as well. I don't think one trumps the other. I believe that there needs to be an emphasis on both, um, and both are very powerful blocks, I would say. Um, so, with that being said, we want to sort of delve into connection to the self and to others, and some of the tips that we go through will you'll see why I'm emphasizing that piece. Um, this can also be an opportunity to prioritize mental health and wellness. Um, this is not a normal time. We are all having new experiences. Um, and when I say grieving, that's also layered. It's not just a matter of you losing someone to COVID. It is, however, linked to many different types of loss that we can experience and have experienced during this time. Some folks have experienced a difference in their mental health, a difference in their physical health, um, finances. Um, we don't think about the disruption that has really happened, um, outside of becoming physically ill due to a virus. There are people that have had to literally pack their things and move, um, back into their childhood home, because they can't make rent. These are real life issues that are happening. Um, and even still, we need to discuss isolation within that context, because even someone moving back home, that doesn't mean they're not experiencing isolation or grieving. Um, so again, it's something that can touch all of us, no matter what your circumstance. So, um, before you begin sort of journaling through this idea, I want you to sort of bring up into your headspace thoughts about, how do you feel about the changes that you've experienced in this time? Um, how do you feel about the chance of not seeing family and friends? And when I say seeing, I really mean being in the presence of. Um, how does that feel for you? And I just want you to kind of like bring up that thought, and hearing me say that, what sort of things kicked up for you in thinking about that? Um, so I think that is something to start in terms of the feeling space. And then I'm just going to give a few suggestions, and then there will be a second piece to this that I come back to after I give some suggestions. So, if you are someone, for instance, that typically you're used to communicating in a certain type of way, maybe you don't feel as though you're lacking in terms of connection because you FaceTime all the time, for example. That's, just as an example. One thing that I believe is, could be part of someone's wellness toolbox, back to that term, is, I think one thing this pandemic in general has kicked up is the need for us to reimagine things. Um, it's really pulled on a lot of, people's creativity and the need to sort of go deeper or reimagine resources, reimagine the flow to their days, uh, reimagine what connection actually looks like for them. Um, Maybe gaining a new understanding of what it is they actually do need and what they can do without. And so, for instance, I was using the example of someone that may FaceTime all the time. Could you imagine, having a different experience through maybe a handwritten letter that you send to someone? Sort of creating a different experience, not only for yourself, but for someone else. Um, there is, not to say that a FaceTime call is not thoughtful, but there is a different energy that comes with taking the time out to do a handwritten letter that you then send through the mail. Um, if you are someone that feels, for instance, you are spending a lot of time in isolation, you maybe don't live with people, or you do, um, and everyone's sort of, in their own rooms or in their own separate spaces, um, could joining a virtual world, a virtual community, does that make sense for you? Whether it's based on what your interests may be, um, what, different types of groups might you be interested in joining? And a lot of groups are formed around interests that are offered through Zoom. There are listening sessions. There are, activism groups that meet online as well. So if that's something you have access to, could that be a consideration? Um, for you as well. Um, there are pods that also meet out in public spaces with, a good amount of space that are within the COVID safety guidelines, where you could essentially meet up um, within following safety protocol. Um, so some groups do go offline and into public spaces in a safe manner. So that could be an option. Before I give you the writing prompt to follow, I want to also speak a little bit about the expansion of relationships. So earlier when I said COVID has forced a lot of folks to reimagine their lives and new ways of doing things. Expanding the idea of relationships, I think, is multi-layered and is worth the discussion in terms of not completely getting rid of isolation, but at least alleviating some of the pain related to isolation, right? And some of those feelings. Some folks really do benefit from a connection and a relationship with nature. So if you have the ability, for example, to be out in nature, is there a park nearby where you live, or if you are not is it near nature, is there a plant that you can grow or purchase that you can nurture at home, and sort of connect in that way. The art of taking care of something and watching it grow. There is that could be an example of a relationship with nature as well, if that's not something you can physically go out and do. Relationships with pets. This might sound funny, but for anyone that's ever lost a pet, the grief that comes with that, it is like losing a family member, for many people. And so I don't want to sort of diminish the importance of that type of connection and that type of relationship. And it's something we often don't think about when we speak about isolation. If you are someone, for instance, that struggles with substance use, there are online recovery groups that do meet and that are facilitated, by a licensed practitioner. If you are someone that is seeking, mental health supports as well, there are also telehealth sessions that are held with licensed therapists as well. So these are just different ideas about that expansion on relationships and what that can look like during this time, and is really a source that I feel a lot of us are needing to look to. Even folks that might be in quarantine at home with other people, do you have the opportunity to carve out or to verbalize that you need some time to yourself? Because even in being able to isolate with others, we at times also need to go within and retreat within ourselves. And so do you have opportunities to do these different things and to sort of redefine what these relationships can look like? So those are just some ideas I wanted to put out there as things that I've seen come up in my work with folks. And so yeah, with that being said, I'm going to bring back sort of the idea about what feeling sort of came to mind for you, that I asked in the beginning of this video, in thinking about like what your feelings have been towards these different types of changes. And now that we've kind of walked through some ideas around expansion on relationships and the need for self and community, right? And the different ways in which we can sort of um, look for those things, and where we can maybe find them. I I would like for you to sort of consider what some of those positives and challenges have been through this process, and that have come with isolation. And then I really want you to get into a relaxed state. If you can sort of change your space around. As you can see, I need to be around plants, uh, incense burning, candles burning. So, whatever sort of gets you into a more relaxed state. It could be the breath work that I've talked about a few times um, in your time with me, from different videos and whatnot. That's usually a really good intro before any type of activity, where you have to really just connect the mind and spirit. Um, and so, given everything that has sort of been brought up during our time together today, I really want you to answer for yourself, what are the things that you can do to sort of ease that feeling for yourself. Um, for some folks, there's grief around maybe not spending Thanksgiving with their family members. Um, and that's a very real and valid feeling to have. And so, what are some things that you can do, given some of the tips that were given, and also what sort of came to mind for you through listening? What are some things you can do to ease that feeling, but also what is something that you can add to maybe what you've already been doing to alleviate some of that isolation or deal with some of that isolation? And really just kind of allow your mind to flow. And I would focus on the word reimagining. There's action behind that word. And so pull that into this writing activity for you. Whether you choose to write or draw what that looks like is fine. It's up to you. But that is the main prompt that I want you to eventually answer as part of this activity. So you can, begin with the walkthrough of how you're sort of feeling in regards to the changes that you're experiencing at this time. And then I want you to move through that and be able to answer that last question of, what am I going to do to sort of ease this? What is something that I can, I use the word commit lightly, just given the times that we're in. This shouldn't feel like a chore. That's not the purpose of this, but more so a time for healthy reflection. So let me know how that goes. It could be one of the ideas that I discussed today. It could be something completely different that just sort of came to mind while you were listening or after you're done listening. Definitely let me know what some of you come up with. And I look forward to meeting again virtually for next month. Okay, so thank you so much. Take care, and take care of yourself and your loved ones. Thank you.